Hello everyone and welcome to episode 34 of the Layton Fitness podcast. Now in today's episode we are going to be discussing carb cycling or carbohydrate cycling. So for those of you who are unaware of this, a brief introduction. Essentially, within the context of fat loss, some individuals will use this method to essentially designate different carbohydrate intakes for certain days. Lots of various methods of how to do this. Some will recommend a non-linear approach, i.e. carbohydrate requirements matched are higher on training days compared to non-training days. Or you'll have a couple of high days, a couple of moderate carbohydrate days, a couple of low days, and you might have one super high day or one super low day within that as well. Ultimately manipulating carbohydrate intake throughout the week. Now, why would someone do this? The main reason why they would do this, and I'll discuss whether I think this will be necessary or not. The ultimate goal of this, or the theory, would be during the extended fat loss phase, you're going to see a number of negative physiological adaptations. Things like leptin will drop, things like your metabolic rate will drop, and the idea is by having these short-term higher carbohydrate days, this can help raise leptin, and their presumption is it will give a short-term metabolic boost, and therefore fat loss will be better using a carb cycling approach. However, it's important just that we take a step back first and look at the bigger picture and get these basic fundamental principles in place. So as discussed before, there needs to be a chronic energy deficit over a period of time. So regardless of whether you're using a carb cycling approach or a linear approach to fat loss, i.e. the same macronutrients and calories all the time, there needs to be a chronic energy deficit over a period of time. Even if, for example, during the carb cycling model where you've got 2 high days, a couple of moderate days and a couple of low days and one super low or high day, there should still be that net energy deficit at the end of the week. My biggest problem with carb cycling is sometimes it can miss this key component. By doing these wild fluctuations throughout the week, we can actually put the cart before the horse, as Eric Helms would say, and ultimately not create that energy deficit over a chronic period of time. So that's just one concern. Fair enough if you use it and you're still in the energy deficit. However, in my opinion, it just overcomplicates things. It's also important to know that fat loss can be obtained just by a linear approach, essentially the same macronutrients consumed every single day, and then you're manipulating either food intake and or cardio subject to your progress. If you hit a plateau, you might drop calories and or increase expenditure. Now, with regards to having higher carbohydrates on training days compared to non-training days, this sounds pretty plausible. You're probably thinking, well, that makes sense. Obviously, you're burning more calories on a training day compared to a non-training day. However, it's important just to distinguish that we are not endurance athletes. If you were training twice per day, like an endurance athlete would, compared to a rest day, there's also a significant difference between calories used on training days compared to non-training days. However, for the context of most people listening who are just doing weight training, we don't really see any need to manipulate calories on training day to non-training, as long as you've got that net energy deficit over the course of the week. However, if you do have a preference to have higher calories on training days compared to non-training, you could still do that, again, as long as you're staying within that principle of being in a net energy deficit over a chronic period of time. Now, with that being said, even though I'm not a huge fan of carbohydrate cycling in most circumstances, just because a linear approach will achieve the same result, I am a fan of high carbohydrate refeed days, with the caveat when they're actually necessary. So this is a key point of making sure you're using these refeed days when they're actually required. So for example, if you're above 20% body fat male and you're starting a fat loss phase, you don't need any refeed days until you're sub 15% body fat, closer to 10% body fat at least. The reason being, you're just not going to see those negative physiological adaptations until you're much leaner. Therefore, for someone with more body fat, a linear approach will be fine initially. Now, with that being said, when they do get leaner, some high carbohydrate refeed days can definitely be a useful tool. And again, the goal of this is to restore something called leptin, replenish glycogen, and also just give the client a psychological break from dieting. Now the magnitude of refeeding and the frequency really, as always, depend. However, the leaner you get, the more frequent these refeeds will become, and the magnitude will also vary as well. For the most part, I like to put this pretty much around their maintenance carbohydrate refeed figures. However, for some people, we almost want to try and get that refeed day close to their muscle gaining carbohydrate figures. Therefore, it really depends. There's going to be some trial and error in there as well. However, that's just an important point I make. So despite the carb cycling gurus telling you that carb cycling is the way forward and it's the best approach for fat loss, at the end of the day it still needs to be within the context of an energy deficit over a chronic period of time. Now, as I said before, personal preference does need to come into place and adherence. So if you can adhere to a carb cycling model and you're going to be in a chronic energy deficit over a period of time, and you're focusing on measuring your progress frequently and then making changes subject to progress, then I don't see any problem with whatsoever. However, like I said, it can be an overcomplication that's not going to be any better than a linear approach with refeed days added when required when you're much leaner. So hopefully you found this useful. Hopefully you can start applying some of these principles. Like I said, for the most part, carb cycling just isn't necessary. However, high carbohydrate refeed days can be a useful tool if the individual is lean enough. If you're still yet to download my free ebook, How to Set Up a Nutrition Plan, if you go to James Layton, Layton Fitness.co.uk, you can download that immediately. I've also got lots more content on my site. I think I've got over 100 videos. You can look back at some of my previous articles. You can also listen to all the podcasts, and also you can learn more about myself and some of the services I offer. But thank you very much. I look forward to speaking to you next week. Take care.